My name is Ruby Valencia, and I work with the City of Palo Alto's Below Market Rate Program. Thank you again for joining us this evening and learning more about the rules and regulations associated with purchasing a BMR home. Joining us would be Albert Yang. He is the Assistant Attorney for the City of Palo Alto, and Cheryl Klein, we just met right now. She is our COO at Alta Housing, who also supervises the BMR program. So today's agenda will include a overview of the guidelines of the Palo Alto BMR purchase program, would be the background and the intent of the program, the BMR owner responsibilities, and transferring or selling your BMR home. I do want to point out a few housekeeping things to consider while we are going through the presentation. We will have some time by the end of this presentation to answer any questions that you may have pertaining to the webinar. We ask you to hold on to them. There should be a section at the bottom of your screen where it's like a chat section where you can also include your questions there. This presentation is recorded and will be available on our website, altahousing.org. If you have any questions, feel free to start including them in the chat box. Let me see if everybody's here. Okay. Oops. So I did wanted to give a little bit of a background of where and how, when and how the BMR program started. So the City of Palo Alto founded the BMR program in 1974, implemented one of the nation's first inclusionary housing zoning policies. Is everybody able to hear me clearly? Yes, thank you. That required a mix of cost and type of housing in residential plan unit developments. The city's goal for BMR is to increase the availability of affordable housing options for low and moderate income families within the city. Another of our goal was to promote economic diversity and prevent displacement by ensuring that a range of income levels can afford to live in the city, and also to maintain community stability and prevent gentrification by providing housing opportunities for residents who might be priced out of market. Currently, we have approximately 230 units within the below market rate program. And we will proceed with the introduction of Alta Housing. Who is Alta Housing and what is the role within the BMR program? Alta Housing is an independent nonprofit that builds, develops, acquires, and manages low and moderate income housing in Santa Clara and San Mateo County. Alta Housing helped the city craft the BMR program back in 1974 and has been the third-party administrator since then. The program is consistent with Alta Housing's mission as a nonprofit. We have worked with the City of Palo Alto because we want to see an increase in supply of for-sale housing and related rental housing for individuals and families whose incomes are insufficient to afford market rate housing. I'm going to pause for a minute here. It seems that the screen was interrupted. Cheryl, are you able to get back on track? Thank you. Okay. People often ask us, what are the BMR units and how do they come into being? When new housing communities are built, a certain percentage of them, now 15%, must be sold or rented to families who can't afford market prices. And how does Alta help? We help by selling new BMR homes. We make sure that the households buying them fall within the income guidelines. And on the rental side, we work with property managers and residents to make sure the rents being charged fall within the program guidelines and the tenants fall within the income guidelines as well. We also manage the BMR waiting list for purchasing your home. We help maintain the waiting list for prospective buyers, all new sales and resales. On marketing and promoting the BMR units, this required that whenever development of 3 or more residential for sale units is built, at least 15% of those units at below market rate are set aside. We also help enforce the BMR requirements by making sure that our BMR owners stay in compliance by submitting the owner occupancy certification form that is provided once a year. We oversee the resale process. We notify the city about property transfers while facilitating sales transfers of these properties. We help the current owners by becoming liaisons between owners and the attorneys when an owner places a property into a trust by preparing the BMR agreements. And Cheryl will discuss these agreements in a few minutes from now. Now I'm going to turn this section to Cheryl, and she will be taking over. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruby. I also want to introduce Jean Kang, who's also on this call, and she's part of our BMR team, and she's been working in the BMR department for, I think, over 15 years. The city, as Ruby said, set up the BMR program to create housing options for families who can't afford market rate homes. And this is a very important program for the city, and they want to make sure that the houses that are BMR houses are going to remain affordable over time. So in return for giving you the opportunity to buy these homes at a discounted price, the city wants you to follow the rules of the program. So when a new housing community is built, the developer has agreed to set aside 15% of the units to be sold at discounted prices. And this is a picture right here of a new development, 2850 West Bayshore, which is right down the street from our offices in the Sobrato Center. And per the city's requirements, these homes are located throughout the development, in all the buildings, on each floor, and in each project phase. So there's no concentration of the BMR units in one location. That's not permitted. Can I just ask everybody to mute themselves? Okay, great. So this 2850 West Bayshore will have 7 BMR units, and it's the most we've had in a long time. And there'll be 3 and 4 bedroom townhomes. So we're very excited about it. So you can see that the external appearance is identical for both the market and the below market rate units. Below market rate owners are entitled to the same facilities and amenities as the market rate homes. And the HOA fees are also the same. So tonight we are going to talk about the agreements that you sign when you buy a BMR home. And the 3 agreements that we're talking about were most recently updated in 2018. So the agreements that the city asks you to sign are a resale agreement, which is also called the occupancy, resale, and refinancing restriction agreement, a deed of trust, and a promissory note. And these documents spell out the rules for participating in the BMR program and the repercussions if you don't follow the rules. These agreements are between you and the City of Palo Alto. So as long as you own a BMR home, the city is your partner. And you need to keep in touch with the city and let them know if you're going to refinance, if you're going to sell, if you're planning on moving. And you need to check in with them every year to let them know that this is still your primary residence. So first, we're going to talk about the resale agreement. So the resale agreement places conditions on living in your home, and it spells out the terms of the sale of your home. The resale agreement has a term of 59 years. And here is what you are agreeing to. You are agreeing that you and your family will live in the house as your primary residence. This means that you're going to live in the house for at least 10 months of the year. You also agree to keep the house well maintained and cared for. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You're also agreeing that when it's time to sell your house, you're going to tell the city. The city has the option to purchase your house from you if they want. And the city has this option because they want to make sure that the houses that are in the program stay in the program. So, and finally, if you agree to sell your house at a restricted price, and the resale agreement also spells out the formula for the restricted price that you can sell the house at. So the city wants the price to stay restricted so the house can be sold to another family who's in the BMR program. So once a year, the city wants to know that you are living in the house as your primary resident, and they ask for confirmation. So Alta Housing, as their compliance partner, reaches out to you for this confirmation. And in the beginning of every year, we send out letters to all of our BMR owners, asking them to confirm in writing that their BMR house is their primary residence. We also ask for proof. So part of that proof is providing a utility bill and a copy of your property taxes. What happens though if something in your life changes and you can't live in your house for a few months or let's say a year? What can you do? So the city has a provision that they spell out in this agreement, basically saying that you can rent out your house for a year, but you need the city's written consent. And the income that you get from that rental has to follow a formula. It can either be the monthly cost of your mortgage, your HOA, property insurance, and taxes, or 30% of the income of the tenant that is renting your home. You can't rent out your home on Airbnb or at market rate prices. You need to check with the city and get their permission to do so. The city also wants to make sure that you take care of your house, you keep it in good repair and in clean and orderly condition. So you also need to make sure to keep a standard insurance policy in place. And the insurance should be equal to the replacement value of the property, and it should be adjusted from time to time. And this is about every 5 years. And your mortgagor is also going to want to make sure that you have insurance in place. And if your property is located in a floodplain, you're also going to need to maintain flood insurance. So you can make capital improvements on your BMR house. And you don't need to ask the city's permission to make the capital improvements, but you do need to make sure that you follow the city's building codes. And if the improvements cost more than $5,000, then their depreciated value can be added to the maximum resale price when you sell your house. So if you make capital improvements that are over $5,000, you should be sure to save the receipt and the invoices for these improvements because we're going to need to verify the costs. And if you live in an homeowners association and while you're living there, they have an assessment, a large assessment, then that too can be added to the basis of your house. So if you are thinking of moving or selling your BMR home, it's very important to reach out to us and to reach out to the city. So as I said before, the city has the first option to purchase your home. And if they decide that they don't want to purchase your home, then your home goes back into the BMR pool and Alta will help find someone on the waiting list who is eligible, who can can purchase the house. So we don't use real estate agents for these transactions. Alta will help facilitate this sale. So it's important, if you're thinking of moving or selling, that you reach out to us and the city. Okay, and now I want to talk a little bit about how the resale price when you sell is calculated. So the formula for this resale price is in the agreements, and the city wants to help another lower or moderate income household own a home, and so therefore the city spells out a resale price formula. And the maximum resale restricted price that a seller can get is the lower of an indexed formula or the fair market value. And here I'm going to walk you through the indexed formula. So this is for a house that was originally bought in 1994. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom condo. So it was originally purchased for $83,000. And using the consumer price index, we estimate that what $1 in 1994 is now worth $1.43. So the indexed value, which is the 83,000 times 1.428, is equal to $118,000. And this family, let's say, made some capital improvements, and the value of their capital improvements was $8,000, and they had all of their receipts, and all the work was done to building code, so we can add that on to the price. And then, since the property is in good repair, the city lets the seller have a maximum of $2,000 in appreciation for every year that they've lived in the property. So that turns out to be $60,000. So therefore, it's really important for you to keep your house in good condition, and then you can benefit from this extra appreciation that the city allows you. And so the whole resale price for the condo now is $186,000. So the CPI, which is used for the index, is the consumer price index, and it's tied specifically to this area. And the beginning index value is the month that you bought the property, and the ending index value is when the city receives notification that you're planning on selling. So that's why it's really important to let the city know when you are planning on selling, that you're planning on selling, so that this calculation can be made. And we work with sellers and help them transfer their properties to other people on the BMR waiting list. So let's say that you bought a BMR property now, and interest rates are a little bit higher now. They're in the 6% range. And after a few years, interest rates fell and they're back in the 3% range. So you would contact the city if you're thinking about refinancing, and tell them that you're interested in refinancing, and the city will let you refinance to lower your interest rate, as long as you don't take any property out of your house. You can't do a cash out refi, and you must go back into a fixed rate mortgage loan. Okay. And let's say that you live in a BMR home and you pass away, and what's going to happen to who can inherit your house? So if your house is co-owned by somebody who is also income qualified, they can take over ownership of the house. And if the person inheriting the house is not a spouse or a domestic partner, but meets the income and other qualifications, they may keep the home, but they need to sign a new BMR documents, and those start the clock again at a new 59-year term. So the city also asks people to sign a promissory note. It's one of the 3 documents that the city asks to sign. And sometimes people wonder why the city asks them to sign a promissory note if they're not really borrowing any money from the city. And so the city wants to make sure that if you don't always follow the rules of renting out the property, or you collect some excess rents or excess sales, that those monies are returned to the city and repaid to the city. So by signing the promissory note, you're agreeing that if you have benefited financially by owning the house, you're going to give back the excess sales or rent to the city. And the promissory note is a way of keeping you accountable. But what happens if you don't comply with all the rules? So, the city can enforce its rights and provisions in the resale agreement and force you to sell the property back to them if you don't follow all the rules. So, and if the city needs to take you to court to do that, then you will also be responsible for the costs incurred by the city for enforcing the rules of the agreement. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Ruby, who's going to sort of summarize all these things, and then we are going to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Cheryl. What are the BMR owner responsibilities in summary? As a BMR owner, you are required to live in your home, in your BMR home, 10 months out of the 12-month year period. You also have to provide proof of residency through the owner occupancy certification period, which happens once a year. And we require that we ask our owners to provide a copy of utility bill, a tax property bill, and a picture ID, some type of identification, either instead of a utility bill or the identification. We ask the owners to also stay current with their HOA dues and their property taxes. And this also includes any assessments that are required within the HOA department. If you do have any questions regarding any improvements or any remodeling that you do want to do in the unit, we always recommend that you do reach out to the HOA department for permission